It's that time of year again. Carolers repeatedly violating the no trespassing signs, bloodbaths at retailers for consumerism-based gifts, radio stations transitioning from normal music to the stuff they use to torture spies, and Orpheolus attempting once again to break his longest challenge run record. Yep, it is the holiday season, so you know what that means. Another land needs saving by Santa Claus himself, and since Oblivion got a remaster and that's what this year's brain rot has been focused on, join me with your favorite holiday treat and get ready for sinners to be punished, as today, I will attempt to beat Oblivion Remastered as Santa Claus. As always with my rules, Santa loves his magic, but I will allow myself swords this playthrough, partially because I like some melee combat in this game, but mostly weapon variety in Oblivion kinda sucks. And for this narrative to work, I want to ease back on my whole ice only shtick. I will be using ice a lot, but to be honest, Frost in Oblivion really isn't the best. Shock is more effective, and the undead is largely resistant or flat out immune to frost, so I'll be allowing fire for this playthrough. And for attire, gotta look as close to Kringle as I can, well, at some point. I think the only rule I actually have for myself is that I'm banning myself from Frostcrag Spire. If I want to break the game, I have to earn it. As for the bonus objectives, yes. Dear gods, what did I get myself into? In the other Santa Claus videos, I would have done anything that involves children since they are the main believers of Santa Claus, but since Bethesda wanted to follow GTA's example, there are no children in Oblivion. How psychopathic does Todd think we are? Well, y'all wanted a really stupidly long video, so much so, I was generally surprised at the length. So as a gift to you all, for Christmas, you get a hyper-extended mega-inflated challenge run as I basically 100% Oblivion. But I enjoy big gifts for the holiday season, so hopefully you'll enjoy, but there is one question. Who exactly is on Santa's nice list, and who is on Santa's naughty list? Let's find out. Starting up the playthrough, we meet our protagonist rotting in jail for less than nice crimes. Really, I was trying to base my character off of a very shoddy memory, though looking back, it kinda looks like what happens when you hire a B-list celebrity to make some cheesy holiday movie to pay the bills for the studio. As for the name, I didn't know Santa's real name, just his stage name. This isn't because I have a failing memory and forgot Christopher Kringle, or Saturalia, or whatever retcon I can get away with. I am barraged with casual racism, and I was trapped in my ribcage waiting to be let out. So for the tutorial, I was still figuring out the rules like most character focus runs are, so I'm just bouncing around working on restoration that I end up never speccing into, and not really partaking much in combat. Man, I am such great help. So after escaping the rats, I do what any sane person with a barely functioning brain would do. Stare at the door for 10 minutes repeatedly matching the spacebar with the big name keyboard manufacturers watching on in awe as I grind lockpicking to 100. Well, if I want to eventually make an all skills 100 run for Oblivion, I gotta start somewhere. The rest of the introduction is basically business as usual. I was thinking about speccing into restoration, hence me spamming the healing key, but after the tutorial, I put it on the back burner. I can't trust me with myself, alright? I tried having a nice sit down with cookies and eggnog, but the resident of the house I was illegally squatting at didn't take too kindly. I casually pushed down some logs onto some unsuspecting goblins, resulting in the required 2 deaths each year by mishaps while chopping down Christmas trees in the forests. Eventually, I am reunited with my babysitters for the not-so-nice individuals, and the urinal lets me pick my birth side. Lord. Very easy decision. I'm going to be in clothing for the entire run, and the 15 armor points is actually massive in this game. That is the same defense as an Ebony Curious. And the Magicka resistance on top of the Breton's natural resistance is going to trivialize a lot of the more difficult encounters. Easily the best birth sign in the game. I continue being all the help I can, mostly because Santa was a rapscallion in his youth before ascending to sainthood. Well, my lack of action has led to a Black Friday flash sale where there was a murder for the hot tech item that was mass-produced and overpriced. As for my class, I'm going with a generic mage build, focusing on the stuff that a Santa Claus would go for. If I could go back in time, I would have done Blade over Illusion, since not once in the run did I use Illusion. What's done is done, I get some rats a cold touch, and I'm out in the real world, ready to begin a journey of a sinner to a saint. At least in the early game, the enemies go down without too much fuss to these frostbitten fingers, waiting out late for stores to open, and leveling up for the first time. And I actually put some points into luck, something I actually never do. I don't know, I know luck is good, but for my playthroughs, rather invest my points into endurance to live longer, and then whatever my run is based on. In the Imperial City, I immediately began fueling my financial needs by duping scrolls to sell for skooma money. This isn't cheating, this is being lore accurate. since YouTube really doesn't like me running a sweatshop of elves being starved to death for 23 hours a day to feed the growing population's greed. Once I had my funds, I began buying some spells and some other things to start my growth as a wizard. But this is going to be weird, but my first course of action is actually going to be joining the Thieves Guild. I mean, being a thief is all a part of being Santa Claus. He is the motherfucking master burglar, able to break into every house on the planet, sneak in past security cameras to steal everyone's pantry. But of course, I gotta get myself to the Master Thief material first. While waiting for my sneak exploit to show up, I was accosted by some conjurer. Instead of engaging in a fair duel, he just decided to bring a paintball gun to a police station holding the receptionist, aka the chief's mistress, hostage. It didn't go well. I really only need 2 things for doing a Thieves Guild questline, since I will argue it is the hardest questline to do successfully, at least for your first time. Some potions of chameleon for emergencies, which I duplicated beforehand, though I won't be needing them too much, and the other is a maxed out sneak skill, which can be easily done by giving yourself epilepsy by repeatedly opening and closing Armin's inventory ad nauseum. After 30 minutes of existing in a state somewhere between catatonic seizure and carpal tunnel, so a modern programmer, I hit sneak 100 and I talked to Armin to begin the questline. The initiation is rather simple. All you need to do is break into some guy's house and steal a secret recipe book that might call for the forbidden jerky commonly consumed in RimWorld if all the war crime allegations are to be believed. Having done this quest many times before, I don't even need to ask beggars where the house is. I just seal the book beneath Methendril's nose, and I hand it in to be officially indoctrinated into the life of thievery. You could have just promoted me to HR at an average company so I can commit wage theft. Way more lucrative of a career prospect. You end up stealing way more than all the robberies, car thefts, and burglaries combined, and the law will conveniently look the other way. The sucky part about the Thieves Guild is that between missions you need to steal a bunch of shit from the populace and fence them off. It gets annoying really quickly since you have to break into shops in the middle of the night and pray that the store workers, after going on a massive bender at the local bar, don't see you and rat you out. I get it, you need to work on your thievery and such, but it does get a little boring after a while, but at least you are role-playing more. If you ever want to fast-track stealing shit, save yourself a massive headache, and just pickpocket Birds while he's sleeping of his very valuable enchanted gear and save scum in the process. Then go to Ognar to peddle your wares that were legally obtained. It is only illegal if someone sees you do it, and you can easily reach 1,000 gold fence to be able to complete the entire questline. Now I can complete the questline in a rush. It's not like I'm going to be doing every questline save for one in the game padding out the runtime. The first official mission is stealing tax information from the local guards barrack to hand back to the poor. Always the poor people getting taxed, and not the billionaires. Well, sure, they weren't very keen on some homeless prison escapees sneaking around their barracks in the middle of the night, but at least the quest was pretty quick, and next up is stealing a bus from a church's undercroft. I am so going to hell for this one. So much so, the guys are demanding I repent. The bus was a quick steal, and I even incurred the wrath of their ancestors. At least I could be able to sneak away. When I return to the waterfront, everyone is searching frantically for Armand, so I get the game plan on ratting out the rat, right next to the captain of the guard. Thank God this is a video game made in 2006, and not in the modern day, or I'd be very suspect of the game's realism. Ignore the hyper-realistic graphics and the release date of 2025. I let Lex know his informant is at her job, and she gets a delicious taste of irony, and I'm already done with Armin's arc. I always felt you spend so much more time with Kristoff than you actually do. I traveled to Leywin and searched for a ring stolen by Muse, since he is rather bad at his job. Don't worry, Leywin's workers are all horrible at their jobs, so the Countess has the ring, and I don't think I can steal the ring while she's working on her calves like that, so I sneak into her quarters in the middle of the night, though I think I made a wrong turn at some point, and ended up in her BDSM dungeon of non-consulting Argonians. At least sneaking into their quarters was pretty easy. I just had to wait a while for the couple to fall asleep. Once I divorced the couple, I handed in the ring, and continued on my thieving adventures in a questline I really like, almost as much as the Dark Brotherhood. The next part of the questline is getting Lex to back off the Thieves Guild once again, and while you could sneak into the Archmage's bedroom in the middle of the night, there is a reason Chameleon was removed in Skyrim. Well, that, and there is a reason Santa remains undetected during Christmas Eve. He just item duplicates potions out of nothing, breaking the laws of the conservation of matter. To him, logic doesn't matter. I run to the quest objectives afterwards like an obedient Bethesda drone, and that quest is done. Simple and clean. In this economy, everyone probably needs to do some gig work to be able to afford rent, so I became a slop dredge, serving probably edible food to the prisoners. I mean, probably still more edible than the school food. I get my information about disappearances, and as payment for the information, I was supposed to pick the lock on the bars. I flat out spaced out that part. I'm bad about my memory, okay? I sneak my way through the wine cellar, eyeing many bottles such as the popular wine of my hometown, Chateau Le Box, vintage, last Tuesday. Inside the wine, I find a vampire who might have had one too many blood grapes. I find it kind of weird how the pale lady and the muse are just kind of there at the end. I escort the very unfortunate Argonian who has been humiliated in 3 major cities, now through the castle in a very roundabout way that somehow gets us out unseen. Thankfully this quest is not too difficult, and I turn in a library book to my Khajiit friend. And we are already about done with part 2 of the Thieves Guild questline already. Time to take care of Lex. While as an anvil for the quest, I did find out the chapel had a vigilante Estendar incident once again, and the main gimmick is sneaking through another castle to get some paperwork. Weird that this is the 3rd time we had to do such a thing. I took the paperwork to a mysterious stranger Anvil can count on, and I put the stamp of approval on the envelope. I let Lex know that he has been reassigned to a faraway district very far from his family right now, right in time for the holiday season. Hey, that was corporate's idea so they don't have to relocate to a faraway location for the holiday season. At least with that, we are already in the last stretch of the questline. I traveled to the icy north of Can You Beat Skyrim as Santa Claus, full of rhymes back when I wasn't a complete psychopath and not sadistic, and then talked to about getting some magical MacGuffins. My first MacGuffin is in the furthest possible place, far away from everything sane and logical, and make myself level my athletics so that way I cannot run away from my depression, and I walk past my tower of crutches, reminding myself that I'm not allowed to cheat on my homework. My parents will know if I fail the semester, and they still have the receipts for my presents that they are more than willing to return to the store. I also became a mountain goat, enjoying the high mountain air as training for when I get an airship to travel the world. So why exactly am I including these random quips? Well, there's barely any interesting stuff that happens between dungeons, and before long I am at church for the 23 days required church service. I bribe various monks here because there is nothing cardinals like more than bribing children for services, and I am not allowed to leave with my sinful comments as the game decides to infinite load. This actually happened several times, and I have to close out of the game several times to fix this. I followed the monk to the Undercroft, where I began to sneak through the dungeon. These monks are thankfully blind, probably from watching some very naughty Santa Claus videos when they were young. The Santa in those videos were yes daddies. One of the sections I did come across a skeleton that was highly resistant to frost magic. Yeah, frost remains as the worst element because more enemies resist ice than fire or shock, and you find them much more commonly. I hopped over some spikes, avoided a ghost that is immune to frost, and decided to scrap with the Pope staring at some balls. The blind priests do live up to their names. I picked up the katana and decided to use swords in this playthrough for something much later on. Plus, everyone knows Santa is an otaku weeb. I returned to and handed in the orb of knowing who is naughty and who is nice, which I might steal back once the questline is done for personal needs, then I returned to him in a different house during his couch surfing days, and next up is getting a key for something. I began snooping through the castle and found another secret passage. At this point, I would have explored every single castle to its fullest. Only big thing that this castle leads through is a massive dungeon filled with many wizards wishing to get a little bit of that holiday magic, but the snow isn't actually snow. Correct color and texture, but wrong reaction. I didn't feel like fighting the secret Slaughterfish super boss, since I have no combat capabilities, so I just snuck on past. Much of the rest of the dungeon is just one generic dungeon dive, and I really don't feel like doing any fighting, until the end where I was spotted and had to get the key-shaped arrow with a couple angry mages coming after me. Fothis was busy hanging holiday lights, but tragically he slipped and fell off the roof to his death, and people wonder why I don't like to hang holiday lights. At least I don't have a blood price for my misdeeds, since I technically did nothing wrong, and I continue following around to continue the questline, which we are nearly at the finish line. Next up, he wants me to steal a pair of boots, which I hang out in a vampire's house waiting for him to show up. He isn't too fond of me stopping by in the middle of the night unsolicited, but directs me to his basement, filled with vampires and other foul critters, so taking care of the freeloaders. Jackman corners me in the crypt to have a free Happy Meal. Sorry, but much like most Happy Meals, I'm filled with lead and other harmful substances that will probably kill you, and that just from the food. You don't want to know what's in the toys. During the spat, I came down with the sucky disease, and I have made too many jokes against Christianity in the last few months that they are banning me from the establishment. Note taken, don't skinny dip in the holy water. So then I did a quick shopping session, since I will need to do the vampire cure disease for a bonus objective anyways. Item duplication really takes away from the annoyances this quest provides. Then tells me it is time to proceed to the final step in the questline, but before then, I wanted to mark some locations on the map while I'm not being sizzled alive in the heat. Mostly to hunt down a vampire, and also for a couple quest lines. Also, I have some absolutely horrid aim with my spells. During my wanderings, I came across Periite Shrine, which will make for an excellent training grounds. I know when I do the all skills to 100 research, this is going to be my mecca for training. Plus it satisfies my bloodthirsty tendencies, so it all works out. If you ever need to practice your combat skills, just beat up a paralyzed man over and over. Once I was satisfied in not helping those in need during the holiday season by stealing right in front of the toy donation box, I finished up my exploration by hitting up the cottage I will need to visit at some point, and after waiting for a week or two, I still haven't finished my transition to a bloodsucker, but I think I'll prioritize wrapping up the Thieves Guild questline wrapping up the Thieves Guild questline by talking to and getting all my gear needed to complete the ultimate heist, stealing a roll of toilet paper. The quest starts by sneaking into the basement of the palace and finding all the Christmas decorations that the homeowner spent thousands on, only to put it up for a month and never use it again, only to be replaced next year. Next up comes the worst part of the entire quest line, getting into the palace. I have horrible memories, akin to being hoisted by my genitals to be hung upside down and set on fire, because the sewer dive takes forever. I honestly think Labyrinthian from Skyrim is a shorter dungeon. I wish I could say more, but when you're going through 3 zones of sewage, followed by another 5 zones of the Undercrofts, it drags to a crawl. During the Undercroft sections, the enemies transitioned to ghosts, which nothing in my kit could do, barring flames, so I began to set things on fire. Sure, this could be seen as out of character, you could see this as Santa becoming accustomed to fireplaces. I really should begin to work on grinding destruction as soon as I can. Eventually, after suffering through dozens of loading screens, I arrive in an Iliad ruin, and at this point the game has you equip the boots of Spring Heel Jack to make it up onto a ledge, which I don't mind since I like a little spring to my step. And before you can use the key, you have to go through even more zones of pointless bullshit of excessive padding. I think a third of this entire recording session was literally just going through this f***ing dungeon. I don't know if it's a bigger war crime to play through this dungeon or listen to Christmas music on repeat for hours at a time. After suffering through this insufferable charade, I finally used the key-shaped arrow to shoot through a hole after creating a multiverse of failures. Eventually, I inserted the rod into the hole. Please, this is a children's story. Get your mind out of the f***ing gutter. The Guardians come to life, wave dashing all over the place, and I don't think they're actually alive. Finally, after what felt like an hour of pointlessness in one of the biggest detours through a catacomb that is larger than the city itself, we conveniently end up in the bedroom of the palace guards. I have had them wake up at unfortunate times, so I just use my chameleon potions to sneak on past. Thankfully, the stealth section is very straightforward, and before long I am bestowed upon an Elder Scroll of unforetold knowledge, such as a reminder to subscribe. It would be an amazing Christmas present to hit 5,000 subs, and we are starting to approach that number. Next up comes the escape, which is the same faux pas I have been dealing with for the last hour. Sneak past guards, and eventually to make the grand escape, I slide into a fireplace. The game recommends putting on the boots, but they break should you land with them on. The solution is easy. Don't equip them. Just hug the corner, and you can land safely with the boots intact. Now comes the escape out of the sewers. Let's just get past the fact I got lost and ran around in circles because these sewers suck, and my sensor sound effect is getting a workout. Enough to level up my acrobatics to 50, but eventually I return to the surface, and I can wrap up this questline. I return to and he tells me to meet him in Anvil, and when I arrive he reveals himself as Corvus because the curse is finally broken, letting his name be said without the censor bleep to pop on, and we are now the leader of the Thieves Guild. And now, I am the Grey Fox, mask and all, so my real name is erased from history, hence why I am named Santa Claus, since that is just my stage name. And while yeah, you might argue why the hell would Santa be the leader of the Thieves Guild? Well, for one, the conclusion of the questline fits in line with Santa's line of work, and for two, Saint Nick is the patron saint of many things. One of them is the saint of repentant thieves. I swear, everything I do just works out. And I guess needing to get rid of this whole blood-sucking thing, I forcefully found a bed to sleep in, and with that, I am now a full-fledged vampire. I think I got my holiday seasons mixed up. I talked to a couple NPCs who really do not like my guts. I guess having high infamy and no fame really does that to a person. I talked to Hasseldor, aka the Best Count, and he suggests I talk to the Glamorral Witch. You know, the witches that you casually commit genocide to in Skyrim. I talked to Missild, and to start the cure, you need 5 grand soul gems. I at least had the foreknowledge to grab everything I need before I became an average redditor, the only exceptions being Argonian blood and ashes of a powerful vampire. I just casually cut into the statue of an Argonian and asked for the vampire lord. I just chill out with the vampires in the cavern. And for Hindoril, he might be a powerful vampire. I think he drank 20 too many of the special spice eggnog and just did nothing as I sent his life to the next. I took my DoorDash order to the witch, and she suggests I wait 24 hours for the potion. Except right when I do, I am now starving because I cannot afford the fruitcake for the holiday season, so I am now sizzling in the sunshine. I probably should have waited inside the house until the sun came down, but I'm not super smart. I had to spam my potions trying to desperately crawl into the nearby cavern. I am at least glad I got the shopping stuff out of the way before I became flammable. Otherwise, I think I'd rather shove a Christmas tree up my arse. I gave a potion to Hasseldor, who gives the potion to his wife so she can finally pass. It is heartbreaking, but overall, a very solid conclusion to the quest. I drank the potion of cure vampirism so that way I can enjoy the sunshine, and at this point, everybody hates me. So I guess as any character-focused narrative would do, I begin my long road to redemption. At least I have immortality in a sense, and also an affinity to the night. Life is filled with hardships, and sometimes we have to begin from our nadir to begin our road to redemption, and work towards improving ourselves, and yeah, nobody likes us. So I guess time to work towards improving our fame, and to improve my power scaling, I joined up with the Mages Guild to begin working towards my ascension of power. The Mages Guild is split up into two halves. The first half is actually joining the university, which you go around in various guild halls, completing a small task, and moving onwards. The first hall since I was in town was Skingrad, which wants me to clear out Bleak Flats Cave, not to be confused with Bleak Falls Barrow. The cave is filled with a bunch of zombies deranged from being strapped to a chair and expected to listen to Christmas music ad nauseum. Full-time retail employees also happen to be the best people to be employed for anti-torture tactics. I don't want to be the only thing you want for Christmas. Anywho's, Anther won't leave the cave until all the zombies are bone meal, and on the last zombie I managed to get destruction to 50, so getting closer to being able to kick my build into high gear. I returned the Lost Elf home to Santa's sweatshop. One down, many more to go. Since I'm still a very naughty individual, I figure I could go ahead and start the chain of events for a bit later on, get my sins out of my system. While wandering the road to an ill omen, I found Countess Caro just riding along the countryside. I honestly didn't know that NPCs could even leave their own town, let alone being this far away. Oh, if only I weren't trying to be absolutely despicable. That will be in very early April. I want to kick off the Dark Brotherhood questline in a sense, and I will need to kill an innocent bystander. And no, Vigilantes of Stendar don't count. Otherwise, I'd be joining the Dark Brotherhood every run. I just did a close second and wiped out the Ancestor monks. When I took a nap after the blood on my hands, I was commenting on my killer efficiency. I have been doing Skyrim runs for the last 2.5 years. I don't blink when it comes to my murders. I return to the Ill Omen and efficiently kill the random guy there, and Lucian is pleased and gives me the password to the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, which will be his undoing. I forgo the ability to be able to get more achievements for making Lucian non-essential, and began a grueling battle. Yeah, as it turns out, Lucian as an enemy is like level 30 and is wiping the floor with me. I would be scared if I didn't have the ability to guzzle potions like an alcoholic, wiping out their handles of booze in anticipation of the in-laws coming. After a couple minutes, Lucian is dead, way ahead of schedule, and as a sign of repentance, I think the whole execution of sinners is very enticing. If only there were an entire theme park filled with them, all the rhymes I could come up with. Since I am in the Breville region, I decided to take out 2 quests in the area. My first is grabbing a mage's staff from a couple NPCs who already like me since I have already done the Thieves Guild, so the quest was a really short one. But Kudai has a second quest, saving her friend from his eternal nightmare. I have my own eternal nightmare. It is known as real life. I tried falling asleep, but the Wrath of Sithis came to visit. Time to not learn the error of my ways for being a bad boy. I put on the amulet and took a nice nap into a dream world, filled with puzzles to solve to escape. The first room I did was dodging a bunch of traps and falling rocks, which really wasn't too bad. By having the perception of knowing beforehand, I just damage boosted my way across. It is important to know where the Legos are before walking around barefoot, or else it will not be a fun time. The next chamber is the test of patience. I am a millennial zoomer confused loser, born at the transition threshold, so I have no patience, and I immediately read the map wrong and got a face full of arrows. I banged my head on the wall a couple times before realizing I was reading the map wrong, and once I got my directions right, it was smooth sailing. No Tyrannus for me. The third cavern is pretty straightforward, just swimming through a long tunnel with a couple potions of air, and the last section is a battle against a couple minotaurs, something I won't be fighting traditionally since I don't like playing at high levels. I just let loose a couple zaps with my stick, and the bold man fell. With the personality cores installed, I talked to the elf, and I am free from the nightmare of grocery shopping during the weekend before Christmas, which my anxiety absolutely dreads, and Breville is done. The next hall is Leyawind, which is a pretty straightforward endeavor. I talked to a few NPCs and traveled to a nearby fort. While the fort might be blue blood, everybody knows that blood is red, and the walls were quickly transitioned to that shade. Just vomit on the walls, and we will say it's decorated for Christmas. There wasn't much to be said for the dungeon dive. Then again, dungeons are all very weak, which will be very prevalent in the next questline I do. At the end of the dungeon was a Marauder Warlord, which is proving very quickly I need to upgrade my kit fast, but at least I can come out on top, and I got the necklace. Turns out Kalthar wants me dead, and the tomb will make for a great way to hide the evidence. That it does. Except that won't be the one the halls are decked with. I hand in the necklace, and that is another recommendation. My next stop on my probably powdered sugar infused rampage is the Shadenhill Guild, where the totally not a complete asshole wants me to get a wedding ring from a well since the last associate mysteriously vanished. I dove into the town's drinking water to find a dead body at the bottom of the pool, contaminating the system. I would say this is a problem, but I live in Iowa, so we have a tolerance to contaminated water along with a shitload of nitrates. The poor victim was playing the original Oblivion, where if you are encumbered you cannot move, but I'm on the remaster, so I can walk away very slowly. Only problem is that I'm over encumbered, so I have to waddle my way back to the guild to find out the professor skipped town. I rummage through his goods to find some black soul gems, which I have to hand in as evidence. I would have loved to keep them and torture souls for all eternity in kitchen objects, but that wasn't meant to be. My next stop is Bruma, where I have to find an invisible cat asked to be stepped on when going down the stairs at 3 in the morning breaking some bones. I find him right away, but it doesn't work out, so I have to play along with the schemes by breaking into the principal's office and editing the permanent record so Jaskar can pass his classes and take off the skooma charges. The invisible becomes visible, and that is a very quick quest knocked out. Another quick quest is the Caroling Coral, which Takitas wants me to get rid of his estranged ex who wants a library book from the nearby mountain. It is a book that has been lost for the ages, but given it is located along a nature trail outside the city, I don't think people are looking very hard. Before long, I found on a charred corpse the fingers of the mountain. I too would self-immolate upon figuring out who the book was trying to finger. I'll give you a hint. It is Mrs. Claus' secret ingredient for the frosted sugar cookies. I handed in the forbidden smut that somehow keeps me still advertised, and since I'm in the neighborhood, I decided to hand in the necklace I have been keeping in my stash for the last 20 minutes to Joffrey, and I figure I could go ahead and take care of the Kvatch's Mage's Hall. When I got to the town, the entire city is burnt to the ground with a portal to hell opened up, which I dive inside. I'm starting to think I'm not going to be getting a recommendation here. Since I am at a higher level than I normally should be at this point in the game, a lot of the imps have been replaced with Jurassic Park, but they aren't too threatening as a mage, and at this point, I went on autopilot. I am really realizing just how outclassed I am if all my attacks do scratch damage to the curls. I tried pickpocketing from the Sigil Keeper, but some random guy followed me up the tower and was cut down. This is why Santa doesn't like stalkers. The insurance companies won't pay for someone falling off the sleigh onto the concrete a couple kilometers below. At least the streets will be a little more festive. Once I had the key, I booked it up the rest of the tower as a mindless 20-year-old, going to the coffee shop to grab the holiday flavor because that is what society demands, and I grabbed the Dragon Ball. I was going to save scum this orb for Fortify Magica, but I managed to get on my first try. I guess I am on a luck spree, since during the recording process of this run, I managed to get a Mega Ultra Rare Charizard X on my first booster pack. The real luck is getting a pack in the first place before the morally destitute vultures could get their slimy degenerate claws on the entire section. With the Hell Gate closed, it is time to retake the city, and given my backup, things weren't too dangerous. Everyone is way stronger than I am, and I took the time to heavily upgrade my gear with the duplicated sigil stones, so now I can actually utilize my spell repertoire for extended periods of time. I talked to the close enough to Jesus for the local holiday play, and together we began clearing out the sinners. I wish I had a shotgun, but frosty spells work too. There wasn't much to go over for the retaking of the city, just clan fears like to snap their own necks. Belric is such a dick because he decides to stay behind and sends his men to their deaths. Some might call this being a coward, however this is authentic American ingenuity. Just send your expendable employees to do the dirty work while you rake in the holiday bonuses. Inside the keep, the fiery Atronachs began to enter the level pool, and the Count attempted to get a little too frisky with one. Obviously, he didn't read the Reddit post of needing potions of fire resist before you attempt anything that might get you put on several lists, but at least the city is saved, and returned to the priory just in time to watch the cleansing of the priest. At least the battle was short-lived, and they took the plot-relevant characters to Mount Crumpet to give speeches on how Sean Bean will make for an excellent heroic sacrifice at the end of the story, and I'll forget about the main story for, probably close to an hour and a half. Back on the mage train, the final recommendation is an anvil, sets out a battle mage killing innocent bystanders. I paid a visit to my bedroom for the totally I am not a plot twist villain to be introduced to the story at a convenient time. I took a nap to level up once again, and on my travels towards Kvatch, I totally didn't attack an innocent bystander on the road in broad daylight for her goods. Maybe I might be the villain of my own stories. Nah, that's just my intense mental disorders talking. I finally have every recommendation, and now I have free reign over the campus's facilities that I could have spent $4 back in 2006 to skip. But the main thing is that I now have the ability to craft spells to my leisure. I of course take the time to create some destruction training spells, which I casually employ on some helpless vagrants ad nauseum until I reach 75 in destruction, which I take the time to upgrade even further for my leveling purposes. After a long while of creating Frosty the Snowman, which is a story about a suicidal snowman, and Life is Pain, I managed to reach 100 in destruction, which will be as much as I can to reduce the magicka cost of spells. Sadly, this isn't like Skyrim where you can cast the most powerful spells for free. Once I had my master abilities under wraps, I created a fiery spell for the hell I probably deserve given how psychopathic my runs end up becoming, and I think now I will let the Mage's Guild questline take the back burner as I begin to focus on side objectives. My first side objective is in the swampy city of Breville, where Ursan's husband went missing, and the hardest part of the quest is actually finding out where she lives, and I spent a while platforming across the city. After talking to her, I find a suspicious orc ready to row me towards Fort Grief, where a bunch of unfortunate souls are locked in a fort with me. Well, to be exact, I can't escape thanks to invisible walls, so I'll have to purify the interior of the fort. The hunters are well armed and wanting to kill unfortunate victims. Unfortunately for them, I have been through this dungeon several times before because I like the side quest, so I go on a small hunting trip. I just end up taking a beating in the meantime. Eventually, after disarming a bunch of traps, I make it to a ceremonial boss room where an orc hunter was unfortunately stabbed, shot, and filleted with efficiency. When I stepped outside to tell my friend the good news, the power of cutscene paralysis led to Aileron getting cut down. Once again, I let everyone down, but at least I can exact vengeance for the catfish leading unfortunate Sims to his dungeon. I tell Ursan the bad news, and that is the first of many side quests knocked out. Mars also wants to get knocked out by the graces of the gods. But at least I have some fame now. My next city to clear out a quest is Shadenhall, which Ulrich has kindly given me the online celebrity personality treatment of not knowing my name or wishing to know for future reference. And that will probably lead to a domino effect, leading to grooming allegations and getting cancelled that is all too common these days. I think now I can begin my long road of penance, and for some reason, the urge to sanctify a sanctuary takes over. Of course, since these NPCs are essential until like halfway through the questline, I just casually remove their mortality flag from this plane of existence, and I will save this questline for a future video. And my first target is the vampire. As soon as I had my first victim, they kicked the homicidal egomaniac out of the dungeon. They still have the door unlocked, so time to let loose on some sinners. Once I had my fill of blood, it got all over my jacket, which I think actually looks good on me. I left the sanctuary to do actually sane normal people tasks, like breaking into someone's house and touching someone's painting to be whisked away to an alternate plane of existence. That is what people do when they snort a bunch of powdered, I think, sugar, right? The world is filled with the old models of trolls as a really nice touch, and I ended up going all over the painted world to find Wraith, another standout quest in a game filled with standout quests. Once I grabbed a brush from a dead guy, I painted a door out of the pocket dimension, and for my reward, I was kicked out of the house. Jeez, the hospitality. The other quest I wanted to do in town involves dealing with a corrupt guard. I talked to Garrus, who informs me Ulrich is an old dick and probably should be dealt with. I talked to a sky baby who fantasized playing older games, especially Morrowind since it has the cliff racers. But upon finding out Morrowind does not have simple dialogue trees, or quest markers, or fast travel, or no essential NPCs that can break your save if they die, and require some thinking capabilities, he decided to self-immolate via cop. Instead of, I don't know, using the UESP, or actually letting themselves get immersed in the world, this town definitely swims in the shallow end of the gene pool. Am I talking about Shivering or my hometown where people have actually parked their cars in the vertical before? That is up to you to decide. I let Garth know. His witness decided walking into the fog gate was a great idea. Let Yavanna know Aldous is dead behind her, and this quest has a multitude of options to be resolved. I take the more peaceful route of breaking into Ulrich's house, find incriminating letters stashed in the open, and I steal right behind his back. Stealth is definitely the skill of all time, and I put Ulrich behind bars, and the quest is done. Though, to be honest, I would have preferred feeding Ulrich to the rodents, much like the vigilance of Stendar. With Morrowind done, I paid a visit to Skyrim, and I think the next quest I will do is getting the One Ring to rule them all. Ultimate power does sound very enticing. I ventured into the Serpent's Trail, which is filled with a bunch of ogres and other disgusting creatures, such as the average Reddit mod, or those who put up Christmas decorations in the middle of July. Hobby Lobby really is a den of scum in a multitude of ways. Eventually I find myself in the Pale Pass, not to be confused with the Pale as in the region of Skyrim, or the Vale, another region of Skyrim that this place is reminiscent of. Since I was here, I figured I could do a quick treasure hunt, finding unmarked chests in a specific order that I can never remember what order to do them. The first chest is near the dungeon you need to travel to, the second is in the nearby tower, and the third is behind a fallen pillar that is very tricky to find, and the last chest is at the top of the hill near where you spawn. Doing all four will net you the One Ring, which is a small boost to every stat. Sure, it isn't the Ring of Perfection, but it is a close enough replicant. As for the dungeon itself, it is a dungeon reminiscent of everyone's favorite Torna, filled with the undead, which resists frost but is susceptible to the fiery retribution of hell. Many snooze-inducing zones filled with the same AI-generated holiday ad that they play on repeat because the companies are cheap enough to cut human staff, but are not cheap enough to pay for the numerous advertising slots or their CEOs, disguising their cheapness with saying they're just using the most advanced technology to get away with their greed. I slay a ghost of a bygone time, letting his soul be at peace, just like Sacred Tor, and I made my escape out of this dilapidated hellscape that I might have made a few wrong turns at. I like this dungeon. And with that, I'd made my escape, and I turned in the jewelry to Fiona because the only people who should have historical religious artifacts are aristocrats with no affiliation to said religion. Another quest done, I also took a quick nap to let the ghosts of Sithis think they can take me. Fire hurts ghosts, so this battle was at least a lot easier than last time. My next town is Coral, which I talked to Dharma and her mother, which will be the start of a very important quest later. If I can get that quest to start, since it is pretty finicky. I talked to a very drunk Reynard, who people think is traveling to Shadenhall. It isn't Reynard at the racist bar, but his long-lost twin brother Gilbert, which I brought back to the first bar. They have a nice family reunion, and we all set off to reclaim the settlement. By we, it was just me, because that is what being a good worker does to you. Who gives a f that that worker will end up very burnt out, working unpaid overtime as his mental health continues to decline, and is sodomized mentally by dealing with the most insufferable people during this stressful time. Let's just continue to be lazy and not do our jobs. We all get paid the same, and we'll all be laid off in the New Year's anyways. Random vent aside, I eventually made it to Weatherly, no worse from the weather, and I did a simple purification of the squatter orcs who just want somewhere to sleep for the night since all the park benches have spikes on them. I let the germs know that the surface somehow missed the 0.1% of disinfectants, and I returned to the castle to do a small investigation. Someone stole a painting and sold it online on a marketplace to pay for skooma. I think Urok is suspicious since he's standing on his bed. The quest is a fun and short one if you know who you're looking for. Just find the contradictions in the testimonies, like how it was raining the night the theft happened, or having a basic reading comprehension and some critical thinking skills to understand where someone might lie, or not be me, who sometimes forgets what someone just told him because I'm up at 3 in the morning editing this absolutely monstrosity of a video. After talking to the right NPCs, finding some paint in the paint box that was very poorly hidden, and a painting in a basement, I have almost every piece to incriminate the person who I know who did it. I just forgot about someone having a diarrhea fit because the cook attempted to make a Christmas meal in this economy and using dollar store gravy instead of actual FDA certified food. Once I had all the pieces of the puzzle, I threw the jigsaw puzzle away and printed out the picture online and said I completed the puzzle and turned the channel in. Afterwards, I tried starting Hackdirt and the final quest of the Germain questline, but they weren't wanting to start, so I put them on the back burner for now and started clearing out a couple random settlement quests. I traveled my way to the north towards Ayleswell, where things are definitely not well. Everyone is invisible, and everyone thinks it is a ghost town. I travel to the nearby tower to find out a mage turned himself invisible so he doesn't have to deal with the local carolers wanting him to donate all his money to what is probably a tax write-off. I get the scrolls, and if you fail this quest by not doing as instructed, you'll be told the R word by everyone in the vicinity. I call myself that all the time during one of my numerous self-directed mental breakdowns, thank you very much. I just forgot to wear the ring of Don't Destroy My Luck, so now I am about as lucky as my days Let's Playing Black 2, where I called myself the R word very frequently. It was not a nice time, and honestly, I wish I could blot that time out. I should probably do something about my luck stat, so that way I can go back to bankrupting the New Vegas Strip, and the church very much doesn't want anything to do with me, given how I treat the vigilantes, so I did a quick swim to the southernmost point on the map to Deep Scorn Hollow. It is a quick quest where you can pay a few bucks for, even comes with a Crimson Seppuku knife that is one of the best weapons in the game when leveled. I just had to pay a few thousand for the Ichor to be able to use the Sinner's Altar, just so I don't have to deal with the stat penalty for bad luck. My next random one-off settlement is Harm's Folly. Not a very nice sounding name, given how Korik's wife had some Harm Folly on her and died, and he wants me to clear out some goblins. The dungeon is basically like any other cavern, and the goblins didn't put up much of a fight. They were fed last year's fruitcake that might as well be a family heirloom. I take the jaded necklace and another jade necklace back to Korik, and now his wife can rest in peace. And since I'm in a goblin slaughtering mood, I hiked my way to the remote location of Crapsford, and I'm not talking about the two things that define Iowa: corn and Ford trucks flying down the highways. Here the homestead is overrun with a bunch of goblins. A local camp nearby explains the whole situation. One goblin army told the other goblin that their holiday light display sucks, and the other goblin army retorted that their Christmas trees are micro trees, and they have been fighting ever since. And the people of Crapsford have been caught in the crossfire. They just want to have Halloween decorations up all year because they don't stir up the passerbys. One option to do this quest involves stealing a goblin totem staff and inside a goblin war, a very underutilized mechanic that is seldomly talked about. And the other option is just straight up slaughter. This is Orpheolus we're talking about. If there is any way I can rack up my death toll for the run that doesn't break character, I will do it. Yet another cave that is very similar to the last goblin cave I went through a couple paragraphs ago. People actually like Oblivion dungeons. I hand in the quest, and now the people of Crapsford can build a settlement, and that is almost every miscellaneous quest I wish to do at this point done, save for Hack Dirt, and when I return to Coral, the game finally lets me start the really good quest. I talked to Seed Need, and her daughter went missing at Hack Dirt. Hack Dirt is a town nobody talks about. It is full of meth heads paranoid that the feds are on their way, and in the original, everyone was very uncanny. In reality, the town is so deep in incest, they managed to become their own mothers. This has actually happened in the Elder Scrolls before. There is one person at least in this town who wishes to escape the drug den and start his life anew in a town not trapped in the vestiges of the past, and he tells me where Dharma is held. Thankfully, I can sneak into the den and free her before the crowd that does not understand what ritual consent means, and Dharma is rescued. I return her home, and that marks the end of my quest to side quests, and we still have a very long ways to go. But thus marks the end of Act 2. Santa is slowly breaking away from the vestiges of crime into a more vigilante-style life, slowly becoming a much better person. I think the best way to show that you are a good person is by arriving at the local fight hall and requesting to join. Santa might not be into the fisticuff form of combat, but any little bit to amend for my past crimes will help. The opening quest of the entire faction is literally the best quest in the quest line, fending off a mountain lion from a basement. Turns out there is an entire family of lions living outside of town where you're supposed to hire a local hunter for. I for one believe in a personal touch to the lion problem. Walking straight up onto Pride Rock and throwing each and every feline off the cliff into the fires of hell below. They were all starving because I relocated all the local reindeer to someplace to the north, so now they'll have to hunt the local citizens. Turns out I missed one, and it got into the basement. I think the real problem is that someone doesn't want to fix the hole in the wall. Enjoy the flooded rats next rainfall. I found out that someone is leaving their leftovers from the restaurant behind the house to hopefully get the rodents inside and shut the restaurant down. Nah, it was just bringing in predators. I don't snitch on Quill, and the quest is done. The next quest involves squatting inside a shop in the middle of the night, waiting for the shipment to come in of the highly anticipated card set to peddle it online at a 300% markup. Turns out 3 neckbeards had the same idea, and there is only one who deserves the eBay bucks in this town. Done with Anvil for now, I return to Shadenhall to start Burz's first quest, delivering some weapons to a small-scale genocide of goblins. To ensure the maximum payout for this quest, I booked it ahead of the log trap so no one stumbles over it. These warriors have the collective intelligence of a moth flying straight into a bonfire after flying through a cloud of insecticide. Safe to say, we won't be having to deal with offspring anytime soon. Once I have one more notch in my war crimes list that I'm going to need yet another counting device for, I hand in the quest and get my first quest from the Coral branch, aka the only branch that actually matters in the quest line. I talked to Morden to find out someone forgot to pay their credit card bill. Don't worry, it's the holidays. It's one of the traditions, like using a sack of coal to clobber any home intruders and trying to dress as Santa Claus with nothing from the waist down. That is the fast way to be banned from a mall. The meat of the questline is a dungeon dive, and I sure hope you love Oblivion dungeons, because the Fighters Guild is based exclusively around going through the same looking hallway dungeons ad nauseum until you start to yearn for Skyrim's dungeons. I hand in the book and promise not to snitch on him so long as he doesn't decide to abandon the Fighters Guild. Trust me, Santa will know. I hand in the quest and get another one to deal with the local alcoholics. I have been to the bar a few times. Either they are because of a rocky marriage, celebrating a momentous occasion, remembering that the holiday season is the heaviest drinking season of the year, needing to forget the fact that your car flew into the side of a house last night and now you're on a DUI list, and one more drink will get you locked up for involuntary manslaughter, or they're about to lose their job. Thankfully, it is the last one, and thankfully there is still some work in town. All I need to do is fetch some ectoplasm first. Nothing a quick arrow in a crate trick won't fix. I return to the pub and told the bums to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, or use those bootstraps to pull someone off the ground by their neck. Holy f***, I've been horrible this year. I am really starting to question my mental sanity. I return to Shores, and I am given the good news that I can start the final part of the Weatherly questline, dealing with the sins of a deadbeat father. The cavern is a troll-infested dungeon that is thankfully on the shorter end of my attention spectrum, and at the end I get one of the best swords in the game. Mostly in part it has a very high damage rating, and it is weightless. Well, sure, I could hand in the sword and be done with the quest. I want a good sword to train my melee, so this will do nicely. I just forget I handed in for like another hour. The next quest is taking out a den of thieves with the help of Magpie. After getting the information from Newheim, it is a short hike to the cave just outside of Anvil. Yep, another cave. There is a reason the Fighters Guild is the worst questline in the game, and it's not even close. The thieves do hit a little harder than the normal riffraff, but that is nothing shoving a giant sword down one's esophagus won't fix. They do it all the time at the magic shows, so I reckon it's safe. Probably. They do shove it in at an angle, right? Oh well, quest is done, and I'm back in Shaden Hall picking up my next quest. I travel to the water's edge, and I'm given the honestly simple task of robbing a family tomb for an heirloom to sell online to pay for Christmas presents. You just need to embrace the American way of going about 12,000 in debt to appease the consumerism spirit. Thankfully, the dungeon is on the shorter side of things, and before long I remind skeletons that Halloween decorations are only supposed to be on storage shelves for 2 weeks in early September before the space is replaced by Christmas decorations, and I give Beyond her grandfather's will to be disrespected, and that is another quest knocked out. Next up, instead of doing heroic deeds like the American male fantasy of going Rambo on a mail carrier for stepping 1 meter on your lawn, I get to babysit the son of my boss. And this isn't taking the lad to a pub, or letting him run around a playground after slamming a couple cans of very highly caffeinated drinks and giving him a pair of scissors. Nah, I just have to escort him through another boring ass dungeon. At least I have the lovely chaps who hate my voice, or those who take my sarcastic or otherwise random runs seriously, calling an intended game mode cheating to keep me company. Once a random body has been discovered, I backtrack my way through the cave and finish up that quest. On to the next one. And in this quest we learn that Magilu decided to quit his job at the Fighters Guild and join the Blackwood Company. They offer better pay, better benefits, and other perks to hide the fact the company is shady as hell. So now we have to do the work of 2 employees. I would moan and groan, but at this point, I am fully used to it, much to my mental degradation. It's called my day job. I have to do a simple fetch quest, slaughter 10 imps at a nearby cavern, and take their gallbladders. At least Robber Glean is actually a good dungeon for loot. Once my more unfinished business has become less finished business, I hand in the organs I harvested, and yet another dungeon cleared. I return to the Fighters Guild, and suddenly, all hope from my heart vanished. Azani Blackheart. I'm just going to say it. This is the worst quest in the game. I will gladly collect 100 Nern roots or duplicate a shitload of tongs over this quest. The first Alien Ruins is just a ploy, and you have to wander around looking for Azani. But what the game doesn't tell you is that you have to step on a particular location that isn't marked. Not too bad, except there is an awful bug with this location. Once you step into the poison container room, The entire dungeon fills with poison that will rapidly kill you unless you are spamming the heal key. I despise this dungeon. Only to look it up online, the secret location you need to be at is in one of the very early rooms at the far end. After toxic gaslighting myself, thinking the Oblivion dungeons are better than Skyrim's, I question, why? I step in the right spot, and turns out we had the wrong dungeon this entire time. The ceiling crunch is just satisfying. Now I have to sit around and walk very slowly behind Orion as he marches at the slowest pace known to man and mer towards another nearby dungeon, and if you go to the dungeon ahead of time, you can potentially softlock this quest. At this point, I think I would rather take a wreath of nails, wrap it around my torso, then rapidly remove it, all the while tap dancing barefoot on a bunch of rusted caltrops. As you can tell, I despise this quest. Eventually we make it to the correct dungeon, and we can tell because there are bandits here, so at least now I can vent out my frustrations at this horrid game design. One of the reasons I hate the Fighters Guild. After slaughtering a bunch of innocent bystanders, just wanting to get their kids an oversized box of the most anticipated toy of the season, that is oversized things to the cardboard and plastic, we make it to Azani, where I waste no time in butchering him on the spot. Once the Sin Weaver has sinned his last, I can wrap up this quest and be free of this horrid dungeon and begin the closing act of the Fighters Guild, which means filler. But first, I have to find my way out of this dungeon, and I get horribly lost. At this point, the questline starts to go hard into the filler. The Anvil quest involves babysitting an NPC as she goes through a Daedric shrine. It is just more of the same, clearing out of the dungeon beforehand and falling close behind the slowest NPC known to man as she makes a wrong turn. I am really starting to get sick of the Fighter's quest. At least the autoscroller isn't too long, and now I get to deal with a jailbreak of prisoners. At least they were a quick clean out in the nondescript cave. You know, this feels very similar, exploring a cave filled with thieves. Where have we done this quest before? I almost can't put my finger on it. After playing through the Fighters Guild, I have really come to hate the dungeons of Oblivion. Oh well, quick purification is quick, and I get me a fat stack of cash for my efforts. At least the storyline picks up for a minute, and we need to investigate a mine filled with trolls. Yep, this is absolutely the Forsaken Mine. Yep, totally. Actually no, this is a quest for Harlan Watch, but you couldn't tell the difference since a lot of the dungeons look so similar without any visual distinction. Okay, back in the correct timeline, near the end of the cavern there are a bunch of Blackwater mercs and the body of Varanus, the son of the overprotective leader of the Fighters Guild. Yeah, this isn't good. Orion gets fired, and we get demoted heavily. But that is okay, we can go back to filler, and that involves getting a necklace for the church. The necklace was stolen by a group of the most inept bandits as they took it to a dungeon filled with ogres in the most logical spot, the place furthest in the back. Obviously, this is a test of our mental fortitude. They should know. I have no fortitude because I am mentally deranged after the brain trauma known as the Azani incident. The ogres, which look better than my exes, didn't put up much of resistance, and I returned a holy artifact to the wrong church by anything to pocket the alms for the poor for the pastor's Lamborghini. My next mission is rescuing the daughter of Lord Rogdom. Lord Rogdom is a sophisticated aristocrat with a penchant for a highly sophisticated lexicon of immaculate exquisities. Unbeknownst to the cerebral orc, usage of the intricate vernacular requires a deep decipherment of annagulous jargon. I safeguarded the Lady Rogbutt from her assailants and restituted the Baroness to her progenitor. Suddenly, after the complex pair of sentences has spiked the usage of the thesaurus I used to sound more ignoramus. The last of the filler quests is finding out what happened to the Harlem Globetrotters. Turns out after their first loss in recorded history, they all turned to heavy drugs and found themselves turned to the bright lights of fame, and eventually they did the Harlem Shake into some troll stomachs. At this point, the cave turned into an extinction level event of very hairy individuals. Except of course, I missed a troll in an earlier portion of the dungeon. Once I have collected enough troll teeth for the Tooth Fairy to be forever indentured to my servitude, I let the people at the harem know many of their mates returned to baby food, and that solves that mystery. Now we begin edging towards the climax, but like in Fighters Guild fashion, they keep moving the goalposts further and further, making the anticipation all the more tedious. The dungeon of this mission is filled with goons, also waiting for the climax. However, I get off by watching their heads erupt in the blood fountain, releasing the blood pressure all over the walls to add to the environmental storytelling. If you live in a Bethesda game, you're probably going to be used as a prop. At the end, I find one of the high-ranking members of the Blackwood Company, which I take back to our chamber of interrogation. Either I sweet-talk you, or treat you to an unconventional BDSM session. We did the first option, and I get all the information I get until he puts on the suicide ring. Idiot. If you want to kill people with clothing, you put it on the weightless hoods so you can pickpocket them onto the people you want to kill, and they wear it out of stupidity. Having enough of the Fighters Guild going nowhere, I said f this shit and join the Blackwood Company and be introduced to their initiation. To join, all you need to do is take some unprescribed medication that might be a narcotic close to coke, and I wake up in a drug-infused high, wiping out a bunch of goblins. I love killing indiscriminately to any horde of goblins and soaking in their blood, watching the carnage unfold. I wake up from my high and... oh. Well, I f***ed up. Big time. I didn't consent to this genocide of a small town, unlike most of my others, and at this point, Santa knows that he is in deep Every time I try to help, I end up hurting, and I need to turn things around fast. A part of his mind snapped. Henceforth, he shall become a divine crusader, a vestige of the gods, and if there's any sinners that dare threaten the youth, they shall be cleansed. I walked up to the Blackwood Company headquarters and let the doom music play. Oh, that was really quick. Well, I guess I jammed some metal rods into the rotating parts, breaking every OSHA violation imaginable, because that is what children are for. That doesn't feel right. Well, I burned down the establishment in the drug bust, and the deserter Maglier isn't having any of it. Well, you can end this questline on a high note. I told Valina we now have a monopoly on the hired help business, and I'm promoted to CEO, and I take Orion out of retirement. But I will miss his paintings. Still better than 90% of the AI slop out there. At this point in Santa's adventure, he began to realize in pursuit of power to begin protecting those in need, he would have to deal with an increased level curve, so I took a few levels up to become a highly intellectual individual and let the game really ramp up in difficulty. Though I find it funny how this more casual run has caused me more deaths than all the other challenge runs that I actually put effort into combined. Since I need to prove myself to the populace, I began partaking in Bloodsport. It is a good way to train your melee skills, but it sucks because of the raiment that takes away all my magicka boosts. The first round went easily enough, and I thought I could be cheeky and do my overleveled spell from the original that would absolutely destroy. Drain health, 100 points, 1 second, and you could destroy the entire questline. I think I leveled up a little too much, or the raiment has screwed something, or Oblivion Remastered just being a circus at design, and the drain just doesn't work. Of course the game is discouraging cheese. At least the game plan is very simple. Use my ice spells to weaken the foe, and melee them to death. Slowly, one by one, each foe was removed from this mortal coil as I continued to ascend in my skills. Though in a bit of a morbid train of thought, if the enemies have killed the same amount of people I have, wouldn't that mean that at least 4 million people have died using the power of 2 to the power of n-1, with n being the number of matches? Applies to the rule of being the rock paper scissors champion of the world, where if you need to beat everyone in the world at rock paper scissors in a similar elimination style tournament, you just need to win 32 rounds. As grim as these factoids are, let me inform you of even more depression for the holiday season. It is statistically the deadliest season of the year. There is a massive influx in cardiovascular deaths due to the holiday stress, or making an ideal holiday for the family, traveling, or working during the holiday and making the quotas. There is also a spike in automotive accidents during the holidays thanks to an increase in motor traffic. The days around Thanksgiving are the busiest traffic days of the year, with Christmas not far behind. And with more people on the road, the more traffic accidents there are, along with an uptick in automotive deaths. I am very much not a fan of the holiday season. I have lost a couple of friends, including a very close friend during the Christmas season, and the holiday season honestly hurts for me because of losing those I love. December was also when the world lost Mitten Squad. Even though I have a vitriol hatred towards the holidays, I still put my best face forward, and still make outrageous holiday specials. At this point, this video is now my longest challenge run, and we still have a ways to go. I still put in the effort for the holidays to make those who still find joy in the season all the better, even through my pain. The apotheosis of the holidays is about enjoying the time with friends and family, enjoying the time spent together, for our lives are short, and they could be taken away at a moment's notice. So what was the entire thesis of this rant? I needed something to talk about to pad out the arena questline, since it's just a bunch of 1v1 battles, except for the cheater battles. After about 38 minutes, I am already at the champion fight against some cheaters. The champion fight is tough because it is a 2v3. I focus on the ads first and foremost, and when the battle turned to a 2v1, I just took the heat and let Porkchop become the champion. All hail Porkchop, the true champion, for he is the Daedric Prince of all things ham. Before becoming the Grand Champion, because someone made it to the Hall of Fame before me, I talked to the Great Prince about his origins, and he sends me off to a castle in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of undead and wolves. It probably should have raised some alarm bells, but oh well. At the end, I find Lord Leviticus very blood-starved on the ground, and I find the diary of his origins. Turns out the Great Prince is the son of a vampire. Sucks to be him. I fight him in a championship battle, where he decides to just end his life. I become the Divine Avenger, a moniker of my new mission in life, to punish sinners. The prince was dethroned, and I am now the Grand Champion, wrapping up this very short questline, and now I can wear actual clothes for the magical effects. And on my way out, I am accosted by the adoring fan. I needed someone to light the way during my evening slays, so welcome to the team, Rudolph. Hopefully you won't mind me doing some unfortunate experiments on you. I also take the time to upgrade my gear. Since I am now level 10, new Dragon Balls are available for me. I dove face first into a random Oblivion gate, not the best course of action, but then again, anything to dive for any great deals that was marked up beforehand. Unlike last time where I pulled the required orb on my first try, I spent close to 20 minutes re-rolling for Fortify Magicka, but at least now I have enough Magicka to see me through the rest of the run. Since I have put off the Mage's Guild for such a long time, I think I should finally get the meat of the questline going. For like a month, Raminis has been waiting patiently for me to assemble a big stick, and as I'm going through the Wellspring Cavern, I discovered Necrophiliacs. The Necromancers and Mage's Guild have been having a feud for a while because Hannibal and Mannimarco have an estranged relationship. The cavern wasn't too threatening, besides getting lost at one point, trying to find the key to the Heart Island. Upon stepping outside, I discovered the Necromancers gave the mages the Vigilante Estendar treatment, so I gave them a quick educational lesson on the dangers of falling through the thin ice while ice skating. Your body won't be found until the spring. With the wood firmly grasped in my hands, I return to the university to have it enchanted to discharge all over my enemies. I really need to stop with these innuendos. With the quest done, next up I'll need to speak to the Count, where Mekator wishes to speak to us at an undisclosed location in the middle of the night away from any streetlights or cameras. To the intelligent man, this would be a stupid idea, but for a hyper-intellectual like me, it is just an easy way to get away with murder scot-free. Janus was at least there to bail us out, because he is the best character in the game, and I relay the information, Janus is better than most of the University of Traders. Next up in the questline, I get to explore an ancient tomb located literally next to where the people of the harem disappear to. I find it both suspicious and convenient such important locations are close to each other. After talking to the NPCs, the dungeon starts as a puzzle of deciphering a riddle and using scrolls in the correct order. The order is Fire, Ice, Damage Magicka, Fortify Magicka on the big shaft, and you're let in. I just know this by memory of bookmarking the questline's UESP page. I began exploring the very dangerous dungeon of Ghosts and wandering into the slowest moving blade in the world because I'm not very attentive. At the end of the dungeon, I take an elven crown from an obvious trap, and I am besieged by the spirit of Halloween, which, sadly these days, is becoming more and more common. At least the quest is very straightforward. Even though it is a form of filler, it's still way better than the Fighters Guild. And I hand in the quest to start the last quest in Raminis' arc. I know this quest like the back of my hand because I do this ritual pretty often. It does get pretty chaotic when going to the dorms, since everyone and their mothers are getting out of the holiday party drunk on this suspicious eggnog. After the busy work, I travel to the Dark Fissure, which is located very close to the last dungeon I cleared. Honestly, way too convenient. Instead of waiting for a week for someone to soul trap an altar with a grand soul gem inside it, I just go to the nearby cave and pry the pieces of paper from the necromancer's cold, dead hands. Other necromancers will repurpose his body later on. And now I can start doing Hannibal's quest, and his first one is finding out what happened to an associate that hasn't texted him back in a while. You probably ditched him to go shopping. When I got to the dungeon, I met the world's greatest celebrity, who is best known for his one role in a comedic sketch. Of course he somehow lives through this get alive, but he dies to the first zombie. Sucks that talent is so short-lived, the length of an average TikTok skit until natural selection takes another victim. I also try to let the adoring fan take the supporting role, but of course he makes it through alright. Deeper in the cavern with more necromancers, Marriott comes out, and turns out she turned the person we were sent in to begin with into a living example to showcase Mannimarco means business. At least the boss room is really nice. Once I was done, I removed the remaining necromancers from the pool of living test subjects, and I return to the waiting game. Lecter next up sends me back to Janice to get more information, but before the information can be disclosed, I will have to first take care of a vampire and vampire hunting problem in town. The easiest solution to the problem would of course be arriving to the inn, letting the lights of a nearby sun burst inside, causing all of reality to disintegrate. I hate it when that happens. I tried leading Eridor to the vampire den to take care of 2 annoyances, 1 fumigation and mustard gas, but of course he just does nothing. Eventually I said f it, I'll kill the vampires myself. And the vampires did bleed. For the most part, they were cut down without much hesitation. It really wasn't too difficult, except for the boss enemy. They thought it would be cute to kiss people while hanging out underneath the mistletoe. I remind them that mistletoe is not an admissible defense in court. Also, I got the vampire disease yet again. I would be concerned, but since this is actually good level design, I get the cure in the cave, or I could just visit a church since I'm starting to be a good boy. I let the hunter know I did their job, and he calls pics or it didn't happen. F you, I don't have Instagram or Snapchat. It's so tempting to just kill him, but I'm still on my rehabilitation program, so I guess I can go back to get more vampire dust. I give Eridor his grandmother's ashes, who didn't love him, and he leaves town. Good, I don't need anyone snooping around with the best character. I talk to Janice again, and I wrapped up the quest. But I do find it weird I have to wait for this character to show up instead of just walking into his chamber and talking to Janice directly. It's not like we know his secret, and I've helped him with his troubles 3 times already, but I digress. I am informed that there is a bird in my mind that wants me to beat Oblivion Remastered as Mana Marco, and Hannibal didn't take the news of even more ridiculously long challenge runs on the horizon too well. My next course of action is finding out why the Bruma Mages Guild suddenly lost contact. Yeah, it seems the Mages Guild has gotten the Helgen treatment, and is now a smoldering mess filled with some high-level skeletons. Rudolph is taking a quick nap, and I ended up scraped pretty badly. The enemies do hit pretty hard. Camilla somehow doesn't have heat stroke, but I make sure her ashes are spread to the wind. Discard trauma dumps what happened to him, and a lighthearted Bruma quest was just a setup for hell to come. It is time to send the necromancers back to hell. Suffice to say, Hannibal really isn't taking the news his boyfriend is back in town very well, and at this point, we need to get the plot-relevant MacGuffins back, or else the Mana Marco Skyrim run domino effect will snowball out of control, and I don't think the Unreal Engine could handle such shenanigans. I decided to take care of the southern fort first and foremost, get the helmet out of Fort Telehan, yet another fort filled with necromancers, which simply means that the alternative interpretations of a present-giving bandit will have less houses to give coal to. Why is it coal, and not stealing their desires that make them naughty to begin with? Actually, with the children these days, there will be suddenly a lot of missing phones. At the end of the fort, I make every corporation very hard as I burn the ice caps for profit margins and find the corpse of Erlov face first in some dirt. May Erlov rest in peace. Who the hell is Erlov? The other dungeon to crawl through is located in a very secluded region of the world, so obviously it was a hike there until I find the nature trail leading up to the fort. I'm just used to the Skyrim speciality of jumping up mountains without safety gear and letting natural selection to take its course. Inside the fort, I find a bunch of mages located in spots that would indicate they are to be executed. When I got to the deepest portion of the dungeon, I find Karina betraying the guild just standing there as I cut her down. I would be jaded about the betrayal, but I have no idea who the f she is. Oh well, the mages change their robes to the red side, and I reenact the massacre of Valhalla, for the 2 Fire Emblem fans that have made it this far into the video. Honestly, I have no idea if anyone has made it this far. If you did, let me know. I brought the MacGuffins back to Traven, and he isn't too happy all his students are betraying him. But now comes the time you strike back at the Cult of Worms. While sure you can do this mission stealthily, this is not Christmas Eve. I think we should let the sinners know that holly does not belong on your own front door. Though after being subjugated to shitty-ass holiday music for too long, I think that song is way too propaganda-y. No, the holly should be force-fed down the necromancer's throat and the leaves lodged firmly into their wounds. Santa has definitely taken the Divine Avenger moniker to his head. Once the purification has been complete, I make it to the deepest part of the dungeon to find the Mother Falkar attacking a patron saint. Yeah, the church isn't going to like that, so I make sure this traitor is dining in hell, drowning face first in a puddle of the blood of his sins. I return all the MacGuffins to Traven, who has been practicing his spellcrafting techniques. Sadly, when creating the spells, he selected self instead of touch, and ended up killing himself. These characters really need to learn to read the effects of their enchanting. To conclude the questline, I trekked across the snow, which feels very at home for some reason, and I began the purification of the Necromancer's stronghold. I really don't like Echo Cave. It is supposed to be Mana Marco's stronghold, the apotheosis of the King of Worm's power. You would think you would set up a shop in the dungeon that doesn't look identical to, I don't know, 90% of other caves in the game. For the climax, there really isn't much of a release except the blood out of the betrothed necks. At the end of the dungeon, Mana Marco attempts to seduce me to join his undead army. Sorry to break it to him, but if you're trying to hypnotize this empty head, there is nothing here to hypnotize. Any spells get brushed off by this perfect sphere of a brain. Yeah, for being the most powerful necromancer in the entire Elder Scrolls franchise, he is kind of a pushover, which is really sad. Bro really fell off after touching the Mandela effect, causing him to ascend to immortality and becoming the necromancer's moon, and the dragon breaks, splitting his mortal body to do something. Well, at least with his body twitching on the floor, I no longer have to worry about the Halloween and Christmas holidays being mixed up, and upon exiting into the daylight, I see a sign from the heavens on the most excellent form of transportation during the blizzard. I return to the university, and I'm promoted to Archmage. Turns out the easiest way to becoming an Archmage is by being smart enough to read spell effects and not letting Darwinism take over. With all that done, I'm now done with the base game questlines, part of the main story for the finale, and to appease my fans, I think I should elongate this video just a smidgen more, and begin the DLCs. The first DLC I tackle is my favorite DLC in all the Elder Scrolls, maybe gaming in general, though Future Redeemed is a close second. I let myself be bored by a statue, and appreciate the genius of the writing of the DLC and the central thesis. Seriously, this line hits super hard when you know the central message of the DLC.
Cured? You speak as if they are diseased. They live now in another state of being. Perhaps it is you who needs a cure.
And the room erupts into a cacophony of butterflies, and I begin exploring the mind of madness. I try fighting the gatekeeper to get into the meat of the islands, but I am skill checked very quickly, so I have to do a little detour to get some bone arrows. I let the pro J-Red harvest the bones of a previous gatekeeper, and we do battle. I just take the aggro and let J-Red introduce the gatekeeper to the concept of incessant incest by lodging the bones up his butt. At least the battle is pretty straightforward, besides getting uppercutted, and I'm let loose to explore my mental disorder. In making my way towards New Shio, I do take the time to dismember the local wildlife, which are all really annoying. Hungers drain your staminas, gnarls love to silence you, and shamblers explode in ice upon death. There wasn't too much in my travels, just marking important locations I'll be visiting as part of the storyline on the map for later. I did think for a second of exploring my split personality of a kind human and a sociopathic Pepito, but I decided not to. I gotta work through my bipolar depression first. After a prolongated stroll through a not quite winter wonderland, I eventually made it to a town considered sane for Nebraska standards, and I wanted to focus on the side quests around town first and foremost before getting to the meat of the quest line, and that is understanding the plights of its citizens. The first quest I did was helping a paranoid man become homeless because the city's architects really skimp on the building codes, so I become a landlord and evict him right in time for the holiday season, letting him freeze out in the cold. Next up, I talked to an egomaniac on a fork and asked for its location by the average sim.
Gal burst in it.
The fork is located in a random camp that has a bit of a debacle on whether it is better to say Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas. The answer is to be respectful to everyone as they come from many different backgrounds, and if you take offense to that, well, you're probably just an asshole. With the most deadly weapon in Skyrim in my hands, I take the fork to the dick choke and wrap up that quest. I was going to do the worst quest in the game, the quest involving building a boat out of tongs and calipers, but I could not find Tove the Unrestful to save my life. At least I found the secret smut stash in my plight. Well, with the side quests I kinda wanted to do, since they were the most Santa type ones, I ventured into the palace and talked to the single greatest character in all of media, since I feel an emotional resonation to the madness and with a great Scottish accent to boot. The first quest Sheogora sends me out to do is to get the torture chamber back online. I do love me some torturing in the morning. Zedillion is a pretty remote location in the world, so I do have to hike pretty far to get there. After wandering through Vardenfell, I arrived in the small settlement of Felmore, where everyone is getting very irritated the boss is demanding double overtime for the holidays to meet quota. The quest is pretty quick and easy. Break into the boss's house, toss shit all over the place, and make it look like a hurricane came through, and pickpocket the timesheet to commit wage theft. Yeah, trashing a power-hungry slave driver's grip on reality will lead to a massive burnout and maybe a few firings, but at least it'll be satisfying. As I was wandering in the swamps, I came across the ruins of Vitharn, which is having a bit of a spectral problem. I love this quest, even though it is pretty jank. The front door is sealed, but thankfully, like any other home invasions, the back door is nice and unlocked, just having to sneak past the troublesome neighbors. The soldiers of Ithorn are stuck in the past, unable to fight back. Meanwhile, the general populace is apathetic to the cause, and it is up to us to change the past. The goal is to give everyone a purpose to fight. I grabbed the doll and stuck it on the enemy, so now one of the soldiers is going to have a breakdown and start slaughtering indiscriminately. Next up, I stole some arrows from a very selfish blacksmith and give it to the archer so she can stand her ground, changing a second penance of the past. The last section I had to search around for quite a long while until I found a dagger of depletion, which I let the mage unconsensually sap my magicka just so he can stand and fight. Just had to wait a while for the quest to update properly. Yeah, this quest is super jank, and I have had the game soft lock on me during this quest before. Eventually, after the game remembered what it is supposed to do, the count tasks us to kill the last guard, and after the game being jank as usual, the course of history has been changed, and the quest is complete. It is a fun quest, assuming it works. Okay, enough distractions, time to actually get the island questline done. Zedillion is under the weather and needs to be restored to working order. The dungeon is filled with gremmites who stole all the holiday ornaments. The ornaments are only there to turn the Christmas tree into an oversized cat toy, and once the kittens discover the dangling balls, the entire Christmas tree falls down and it turns into one giant mess. Speaking from experience. Hence why all my Christmas trees are literally wrapping paper tubes with Xmas tree taped to it. Once the sharp spears are back in their rightful positions, and I'm not talking about lodging firmly in my ear canal for the next time I have to hear the 40th rendition of Frosty, I have to play Dungeon Master with 3 randos, and I am very much not a friendly Dungeon Master. Frankly, I have never even played D&D, so I just play the sadism card by making an end-boss level Gnarl as their first encounter, accidentally duplicated way too many keys because I tend to go way too far in my torture endeavors, and for the last encounter, I just let the zombies get a buffet course on a corpse. For my efforts, I get Dawnfang. Straight up, my favorite weapon in the entire Elder Scrolls franchise, since it alternates between elements based on the time of day, and the more enemies you kill, the stronger the alternative form becomes. I get to test out my new toy on the way out, as I'm accosted by PlayStation 1 era 3D models. Once their orderly hearts have been plucked, Zedillion is ready for misadventures, and I'm back to Sheogorath to begin working for the side factions. I started by talking to Syl in her very Disney I'm a very bad guy dress, and someone is out to get her. And she tasked me in torturing the information out of suspicious individuals to identify the person behind it all. I just heard torture, so I gladly partook in the electroshock torture method. I had a hell of a time with this quest, just trying to find the correct NPCs to torture. I know Murine is a ringleader, but I could not find the chain of NPCs that lead to her. Turns out, they were all in the court to start off with. After experimenting with what happens when you replace someone's umbrella with a lightning rod, I finally get the correct information to suss out an overnight meeting which I eavesdrop on. I just pressed him for information by way of electrophoresis, and heard her just derping hard. And Mizada, who was just sleeping peacefully when I introduced him to the Chinese water torture. He tells me to meet him again the next night, and seems he might have had an unfortunate accident of having an icicle fall on his head. I get the evidence of the conspiracy, and confront the ringleader in the middle of a gang initiation ritual. I ratted out Murine, and let the electric chair do its dirty work. My next quest is getting a chalice for Théoden and his very insectoid crown. Rather than torturing residents, my task is pretty straightforward. Just become addicted to the piss of an Eltria, and storm through the dungeon. It is a time mission, and I'll have to continue collecting Feldew, like a tech bro continuing to use Fen as an inhaler. I become dependent on the drug. What started out as a one-off dumb party idea quickly became an addiction, and now I am running around in my undies through the snow in a withdrawal-infused rage, requiring my next fix before the effects wear off and I get even more irritable. Have you seen me during the Fighters Guild questline? Imagine that times 10. Throughout the dungeon, I started out in a calm, before the holiday season increases my stress level to an extreme level and it all snowballs out of control. By the end of the dungeon, I began shanking fellow addicts for their drug stash, partaking in a massive drug bust, but instead of turning it over to the feds, I just do one massive inhale so any survivors will have to suffer without their fix, and then I grab the chalice and close the nearby obelisk of order just so I can fast travel away. With my loot plundered, I handed it in to the scarab, and now I can proceed to the next portion of the questline, becoming a Daedric Prince. To start the long and arduous process, I needed to first light a bonfire and carry the torch a la Olympic torch style back to the capital. Only problem though is that Silent is stuck in the middle of a civil war between the Saints and Seducers, and depending on who you side with will determine how this dungeon will play out. Since I don't like defense missions, I leave the charge really undercrofts against the Seductresses. But since vanity tends to outweigh intelligence, all the Saints got stuck on a door, so I had to tackle the brunt of the army head on. Once religious fanaticism has taken root, the holy war commenced into the heart, where the leaders were slain. At least the dungeon is pretty short all things considered, and before long I am baptized in the flames of retribution, which I take the fires to the local church and side basically exclusively on the mania side. I like being an egomaniac to try not to succumb to dementia, and I also like to be jolly. Since the DLC is basically a fast-track story that has to reward you with premium gifts, I merely get the opportunity to become a duke, and I chose Mania. It is much more of a chill quest compared to the chaos of dementia. All I need to do is make a bug drink a poison. Simple enough. I talk to the relevant NPCs until I get the critical information I can twist a bus to get into a secret chamber. This dungeon is a stealth operation, and I really don't want to be spotted. I just took the easy way out of using the chameleon potions I have not used since the Thieves Guild arc that felt like an eternity ago, with how much this video spiraled out of control. In the deepest portion of the cavern, I grabbed a handful of rat poison and snuck into the kitchen to turn the Christmas meal from food poisoning to less so. I don't know why, but every time I try to eat someone else's green bean casserole, it tastes like literal dog shit, and I don't know how they keep f***ing up such a simple meal. Cream a mushroom and put in some mushrooms. It's that easy. Stop making me puke. I sit back at the Christmas meal and watch as a toast of poetry meets a poetic end. Something something, all the kids get toys despite being spoiled brats and bullying the other kids. And I dumped blood into the fountain, and I am now a duke of the mania portion of my bipolar depression until my next spiral out of control. Still really wasn't happy that Sheogorath is playing favoritism towards a glorified home invader, and she defects to become a Grinch. The Seductresses leave in a huff, and now the Fringe has been overtaken by the Knights, and my pawns are fighting valiantly towards protecting the Fringe's sanity, which mostly devolves to mindless slashing until the quest marker points me towards the nearby ruins. This ruins plays out like most other ruins in the islands, except it is full of forces of order. I just routed my way through ableism, collecting hearts of order, which will help in closing more obelisks. I overload the power generator, and the dungeon turned into a chaotic Metroid escape sequence through a new area of the cavern. It gets really dicey during the escape, just because the falling rocks can catch you off guard and resulting in the unfortunate smattering of the stoners. I rushed my way through, leaving Sheldon behind since I couldn't be bothered in finding how to open the door. He finds his way out regardless, and the Fringe is safe for the next 10 minutes, but a more permanent defense is in order. I traveled to a random dungeon and began exploring its depths, getting very accustomed to the Shamblers exploding in peppermint flavored everything, and Flesh Atronach's bleeding eggnog all of the remaining flavors. Whatever makes the marketing department happy. After walking past many failed experiments, like seeing what happens when you add water to a grease fire, I made it to Relmina, who is responsible for basically half of the problems on the islands, and now I need to use her expertise in human experimentation and war crimes to build a new gatekeeper. I think we're gonna get along just fine. So what is better than going through one undead-filled ruins for a quest? If you said doing another even longer undead-filled ruins to complete said quest, you would be correct. I am really not a fan of this padding, but it is nice to make your own abomination for the holidays. I spent a long time in this dungeon, probably about a quarter of my island's recording time to be frank, just trying to figure out where all the MacGuffins are. I am at least grateful there are map markers guiding me to the location. I grabbed the morning breath, an all-you-can-drink vampire buffet, bone meal, and some yogurt, and wrap up my time exploring overly long ruins for now. I returned to Relmina and began assembling my Build-A-Bear, though I think putting in the artifact for demonic possession will cost me extra. We travel to the big soup cauldron, adding in the ingredients for the holiday meal. I get swept away at the creation of life and watch as some knights get cannibalized. A bit of an unorthodox meal, but when you are feeding a giant family of people who don't want to be there, but have to because the grandparents tell you to be there, or you won't be getting mentioned in the inheritance. I return to Sheogorath to tell him we have a new bouncer, and things are really spiraling out of control. Now the army of Sims are on the verge of blinking out of existence. I ventured to the spinal column of the brain and began diving through yet another ruinous dungeon, but this time with an army of succubi to reclaim the homeland. I am glad I could explore the mind of madness and understand the plights everyone goes through. With how insane I get, I'm afraid someday I'll be locked away in a straitjacket. At least someone will finally hug me. Deeper inside the dungeon, all my backup turns into stone since their lifeblood was clogged up. One of the priests of order took a giant and clogged up the toilet and flooded the apartment complex below, and I have to go and clog it. So basically, it is even more nights, but without the backup. At the depths of the dungeon, I find the source of all gamer bathwater sealed away by overprotective parents. I ring the dinner bell, and the flower is released, bringing everyone back to life. I tell Sheogorath the good news, but seems by the power of plot convenience, Sheogorath goes a little crazy, more than usual, before reverting to his true self, Shigaleg, and vanishes. Yeah, we are 50 shades of right now, with an evil Daedric prince getting ready to turn our spleens to an automatically correct replica, using boring jargon that puts everyone to sleep. Our only hope is inside some random cave behind a Lego door. Dias has not seen the light in ages, and wants us to bring some sunshine to his life. Have you seen the state my mental health breakdowns get to, especially when streaming? The first of two short dungeons is in the Maniac side, where down in a pool of reflections, Santa begins a duel with the Shadow Self, a battle between two equals. Except of course this Santa has our health pool, so the battle is very drawn out. A shadow of my dark days, a shade of the evils done. Santa fought valiantly, and overcame his Krampus, and at this point came the final turning point, and he knew what needed to be done, to become a divine entity to bring good and joy to the land, helping those in need, and this realm is definitely in need. The other dungeon is located on top of a hill inside a sanctuary of heretics. There is nothing more Christian than hunting heretics in the name of the church, or I guess apostles or something. They have a red dot on my compass, and I don't want to wear robes, so they had to go. I don't really feel like being stealthy at this point. I'm getting very burnt out in so many facets, so I just want to get this long run done. At the end of this gauntlet is a lovely couple, and Santa needs an all-seeing eye. So Citra is now a dead emulator because the Nintendo ninjas got to them. Always the ninjas. With the plot items in hand, I returned to the very sleep-deprived loner, and he forged me a new staff to go into the pile of staves I never use. All that remains is getting the juice of the madness going. That secret juice is probably dopamine. Now begins the final dungeon, conveniently located behind the throne. I really hate this dungeon, since it is a giant autoscroller waiting for the slowest moving gnarls to get into the correct position to open the doors. And for the most part, it is just killing priests to lower the spikes in the pools. At first the dungeon went by alright, a little tedious but nothing too unbearable. In the second portion of the dungeon, my patience went to hell. My online packages got stuck in transit, and the delivery drivers all decided to have their trucks break down at the exact same time because nobody knows how to drive on a gravel road in the middle of winter. Their tires were stuck in place unmoving, and I had to manually push the Trents to the correct position. I cannot articulate just how annoyed I am with this dungeon. The fact pathfinding broke on such a cosmological scale, and I had to push the trees to the destination. After 20 minutes of depravity, I finally got to the final pool, ready for this questline to be done, and I found Syl with the best warhammer in the game. Nothing quite like shattering every orifice in the bodies of your enemies. However, in neglecting those who look up to her, she has landed squarely on Santa's naughty list. And now her name is struck from history for being a traitor. With the pool sanctified, the staff is at its full power, and the final boss of the DLC can begin. The first phase involves closing a couple of obelisks, nothing too strenuous thanks to the backup you're given. Phase 2 is where things get interesting. Jigleg joins the battle, and now begins an actual boss fight. A normal Jigleg, despite being the Daedric Prince of Order, is a f***ing joke. So I had to reload the fight and up the difficulty so, I don't know, it feels like an actual threat. Master was not programmed well thanks to the regen, but Expert was the perfect balance. The Prince of Madness, fighting the Prince of Order. If there is any one thing Santa has learned during the Shivering Isles, and its central thesis, it is to accept everyone, and to not stigmatize those with mental disorders, because they are people too. Santa has come to love everyone, and to bring joy during the dark times, and standing up for those who cannot stand on their own. With a surge of determination, Santa plunged his sword into the tyrant, expelling the being from the island, and becoming a demigod in the eyes of men. With this new realm saved, and a base of operations for any mass-producing gift-giving extravaganzas, Santa returned to Cyrodiil to save the lands from the last of its threats. While Santa might be a demigod with immense power still growing within him, he still has a multitude of sins to repent for, which he aims to do to end his character arc. Inside the Chapel of Anvil, a massacre happened. No, this wasn't a Vigilante Stendar incident, and outside, the Prophet is announcing the end of the world thanks to Umaril waking up from his cheetah death. I answered in the humblest of fashions and began the great pilgrimage. Scattered throughout Cyrodiil is a bunch of wage shrines, and given how over the place I have been, they weren't too difficult to get to. After clearing the Mara shrine, and I'm in the neighborhood, I found the Talos shrine, and Miss Karkin is in the neighborhood, so I figure I should get that knocked out, since I am getting awfully close to the end of the run, relative to the length of this run that spiraled way too out of control. Despite me not being a fan of Oblivion dungeons, it is a nice change of pace going through an Alien dungeon after numerous Shivering Isles dungeons back to back. The enemies here are a little tougher to take out compared to what I'm normally used to, that being very low leveled, but nothing I can't handle. That and Rudolph is a very nice distraction for all the songs to sing about. Nobody needs to know what Vixen has been up to, but suffice to say, he is keeping the reindeer population a little too healthy. Eventually I make it to the King of Miskarkin, and compared to everything I've been dealing with this run, he was a f***ing pushover. At least the oversized Christmas ornament is obtained, and I'm back to praying for the gods for forgiveness. And for the most part, I didn't have much to say during my pilgrimage. The only highlight was that I paid Kratzford a visit after probably months, and they are doing pretty well for themselves. Hopefully they turn into a prosperous settlement and not collateral for a high elf invasion. After visiting all the shrines, I am whisked away to the heavens, and I get a holy mission to seek out the relics of the Crusader to stop Umaril. The first relic is located in some ruins beneath the surface of the water, and the tomb is filled with numerous undead and soaked socks. My socks would be soaked if I trudged through the wet snow in cheap sneakers. I find the body of Armiel, along with a bunch of keys to progress through the questline, but I'm here for relics to sell for exorbitant prices. I don't care how to do the dungeon the intended way. I have an almost capped acrobatics. I will just jump my way to the relic. 1 down, 7 to go. I ventured forth to the Priory of the Nine, located in the middle of the woods, where knights were trained and tempered for any holy crusades. I waged holy war with the ghosts of Christmas past, each being a carbon copy of the last, so I'll just see this as a prolonged target practice. Long enough for me to think that rhyming could be a fun way to make a video. It'd probably get annoying really quickly given my horrid writing style and my speech impediment. A few minutes in a sadistic manner, sure that could work, but not a full challenge run's worth. I proved my worth by being a saint of the holiday seasons, and the wise men give me the raiment, and now I am given a bunch of directions on how to do the questline, since I can do a lot of the missions in any order. The first quest I did was Appeasing Kind, a rather simple and quick mission. I had to travel to a nature preserve and offer the adoring fan as prey. It decided it wanted me instead. So I had to lead around in circles, attempting another no-kill run, and by being respectful to the wildlife. Please ignore the numerous birds Santa probably flies into during his overnight deliveries. Once the bear gets tired, I walked into the cave and grabbed the boots, which is a prerequisite for getting the mace. Next up is getting the gauntlets from Stendar. Story goes that a knight used the knuckles to strike down a vigilant and now lies on the ground unable to move. The smart person would seek a way to lift the curse. I say, strike down enough vigilants and earn a free captain hat for your troubles. To break the curse, we have to be willing to bear the curse of Kellen, which we lay our hands around the neck of a vigilant, but now we have a permanent debuff to our fatigue, but at least we can pick up the gauntlets. And in the deep south lies a fort, and on my way there, I discover the crippling debuff with my curse. If I run out of stamina for any reason, I fall over flat on my face, so I'll need to avoid exhausting myself. The fort is filled with conjurers and their pets dressed for the holiday season, since in-game it is in December, or close enough. I spent a very embarrassingly long time trying to figure out where the hell the lever to the gate was. Yeah, I'm glad the fan is here to light my way to the lever. The main deal with the dungeon is that it is filled with a bunch of puzzles to solve, such as counting candles on the side of the wall and figuring out what is the best way to mention the Patreon or memberships without sounding like a sellout. At one point, I did have to worry about arrow-shaped sleep falling from the sky and sending the statues into an eternal staring contest, unable to blink. As for the final room, I just had to play memory figuring out what item goes to which statue. It took a while for anything to show up correctly. Eventually the holiday packages were hopefully delivered to the right addresses before the porch pirate steals it, and I have the shield. On my way out, I did run into some random guy who was imprisoned in the cave. I will be honest, I remember nobody in this questline. The last artifact is held within the undercroft of Leywin's chapel. This running out of stamina is getting very annoying. With the boots equipped, I was able to walk across the void to the maze without much effort. Even Rudolph could, but he could fly across the skies no questions asked, besides the hyper-intellectuals with no mimsy. On my way out, the church was attacked by some Umaril stands. They didn't put up much of a fight, and old Saint Nick avoided another holy site incident, only just using the Dormora's blood. Back at the Priory, Lathan gives me a pair of greaves since I forgot they exist, and we are already close to the conclusion of the questline. I get the information that Sir Roderick, no idea who he is since I've never encountered him on the roads, is dead in some random cave, and some NPCs that I interacted with are wanting to join the Holy Crusade. Sure, I could always use more meat shields. I stumbled my way towards Underpaw Pass in a semi-eggnog overdosed manner, and began exploring the cavern. It opens up into a Halloween special in an underground castle. Already 100 times more thought put into this dungeon than 90% of other dungeons combined. I don't spend very long in this dungeon, since the quest marker pointed me to a location very close to the entrance of the dungeon. Nearly got my body caved in by a cave-in, and at the end of this pathway, I came across a wraith with a sword. Yeah, the plotted ghost hunters would be more interesting if they could use flamethrowers. Just having to deal with a lot of arson charges. That is what failing to cook meals are for. I turned my way out of the dungeon and sanctified the sword at the Shadenhall Chapel in the blood of Aurorian saints. Once everyone fell to the floor, I finished up the quest, while I had to search for one last Aurorian, and then I returned to the Priory. Church was in session, where we had a prayer to probably Talos for his blessing. Too bad Windstrike wasn't born a couple eras later, since when Windstrike fought Umaril, there is no Talos to speak of. With the blessing of a deity, a civil war will be fought over in my spell list. I equipped the armor of the Crusader, and declared holy war on Umaril and his stronghold, some name the writers thought of because Lord of the Rings was very popular at the time. The dungeon is filled with a lot of Aurorians, all dealing a number to this poor knight, but one by one, each of the fishmen were chopped into sushi, and my armor broke. On the first group. Yeah, this is what I get for not speccing into armor this run. I go back to my basic ass clothes, and the battles go by so much simpler. Eventually I find my way into the main room, where all my fellow knights join me in crushing the orbs breaking the infinite spawning enemies. The dungeon isn't too long, and before long I am at the Yuletime Slaughterer, Umaril. It was a pretty tough fight. Well, at first, once Umaril ran out of his evil light, he went to slapping me with his sword, which I outranged with my fireballs. Once the flames of retribution burned his mortal skin, I used the blessing of Talos to dip into the ethereal realm, get the power of the gods ascending to my final form, and fighting Umaril at his full power. Yeah, with the sword of the Crusader, he is a pushover. I carve right through him, ending his reign and wrapping up the questline. I make like a good boy, and in the catacombs, I lay the armor of the Crusader to rest, letting the next hero to take up the mantle when the time comes. I walked outside into the rain to watch someone give a sermon to a wall to stroke my pride. Glad to see the Priory will be in good hands. And with all that, there is one final piece of business I should take care of. Being arrested for some crime I committed. I have no idea what I did, but I got a 40 gold bounty. Also, I finally handed in the honor blade after forgetting about it for way too long. I hand in the sword to its rightful place and get one of the best shields in the game for my troubles. And I tell the Germains I didn't forget about them for a stupidly long time. But with all that, every single one of my bonus objectives is finally complete, so it is finally time to save Christmas. I return to the Imperial business and find an extremely drunk Boris who has probably been at the bar for probably a year at this point, with a stalker right behind him, so I lead him to the basement for a classic pre-Black Friday shanking, and on his body we get a book describing a ritual to summon forth Mariah Dagon to the world, and the ritual is on Halloween, as that is when the Hymn of Death begins to be sung. I return to the university to get more information on the books to stop the ritual, and I convince a local wood elf that ice level music is 100 times better than the shit they play on the radio for Christmas, and I am given 2 more books for my troubles, and all that remains is located in the sewers. I really don't fancy yet another slow-paced follow quest, so I just politely hit on Boris a few times, and he runs after me through the fecal matter. Anything at this point to be finished with the run before the new year. I yielded at the end so Boris can talk to Raven, but I must have had some aggro glitch going on, and he immediately attacked Boris. I was going to punish the sinners anyways, and with the book on the body and Termina's insight, I was able to locate the headquarters of the sinners. I started dashing through the snow on my holy crusade. Through the fields I go, laughing all the way. At least the adoring fan can join in my slaying tonight. You know, in a different context, a lot of holiday songs can double as a warning. You better watch out. You better start crying. Better start to fearfully shout. And I'm telling these sinners why. Santa Claus is coming to town! Okay, that might have been dark, but at least I didn't start jumping rope with their intestines. saving that for future crusades. I rescued the sacrifice from becoming crushed beneath the statue, and continued walking through a winter wonderland. My sword is the snow system, and the blood is now red. Back at the Imperial City, I reunited with Julius, and glad to see he made it out okay. Now comes the rush towards the grand finale, and the first of a series of missions Martin sends me out is on sniffing out the spies outside Bruma. Sure, you're supposed to follow a series of clues, but Santa has obtained the power of omniscience thanks to the powers of Sheogorath, along with a couple of the Thieves Guild's artifacts, so it is a non-issue dispatching the spies. With the keys in hand, I break into the basement by way of a conveniently placed cavern, steal the information, then return to the Imperial City to watch idiots get gangbanged to death. They fail the art of subtlety, that's for sure. Anyways, I'm back in the Imperial City because I'm going to be doing my quest next. So I need to go grocery shopping for the mundane. With the items in hand, I pray to myself, and Haskell calls me out on it. I love this quest because there are many different dialogues depending on when you do the date or quest. One even calling you out when the Isles is in absolute turmoil and Jigleg is on the verge of invading. We have been through this song and dance many times before on the channel. Pick cheese out of a case, cook some ratatouille to bring the rats to town, pocket the poison and feed it to the flock, and wait patiently for them to follow down in a stupor, then conclude the quest with it raining dogs on the cats. I return to the shrine, and Haskell gives me my other staff. Back at Santa's Altitude Sickness Training Camp, I hand in both the Spice quest and the Daedric Artifact quest, and next up is escorting the bird to the Word. I want to be sure the soldiers make it home alive for the holidays, so I pay extra attention to the surroundings, making sure no one ends up as dinosaur food or horny bait. Thankfully, my frost magic does wonders to the Atronarchs. As for the tower properly, I just need to make sure I don't accidentally shove an icicle rock the size of a boulder into the back of a soldier. There wasn't too much for the tower, just playing things safe, and surprisingly, everyone makes it out alive. I pull the orb out of the beacon, and I am back to playing Errand Boy. But because this run could be a little bit longer, I decided to take the time and recruit every city to the defense of Burmy. Since I'm not having to babysit anyone besides the respawning fan, I speedrun my way through each tower in a brisk-like manner. It was pretty calming and relaxing being able to not worry about anyone making it out alive besides my dignity. Maybe that is why Santa does Christmas Eve alone. Coral's Gate is pretty quick, thankfully. Skingrad's Gate took me a second to locate, and it's pretty annoying since you need to climb 2 towers to get to the central chamber. I at least can make solace in the fact I can platform my way to the exit door. Instead of waiting for Janus to show up, I just break into his private chamber. Again, I really wish you could just talk to Janus directly instead of waiting for him to show up. Gavash is pretty easy since I've already cleared out the city of its data problem, and as for Anvil's Gate, I really screwed things up and got lost on numerous occasions since I never platformed high enough. Yeah, the Central Mountain Tower is my least favorite Oblivion Gate style. At least I could eventually navigate through the tunnels in my confusion and wrap up the gate, and talk to the Umber Noxes for the first time in, too long. Glad to see they are still together. As for Gravel, I just hopped around the gate and climbed the tower. It is one of the quicker style of gates all things considered. I told Regulus that his town is saved on the regular, and the quest is done. The last generic Oblivion Gate is for Leyenwyn, with a lot of bodies around the starting location. I am a master acrobat, so I could skip the lava portion and climb up the tower. As an acrobat, you could really skip so much of the Oblivion Gates, and I love it. I pull out the last orb of the non-special gates, and I convince the husband of an Argonian war crimes enthusiast their town is safe, but they better change their ways, or else they will end up on the wrong naughty list. The Shayton Hall Gate is actually special, since it is located outside the Knights of the Thorns Lodge, so naturally, they all go inside. A few emerged out dead or alive, but the Count's son is in there, and as a family figure, I believe it is paramount to rescue the Wayward Knight. This gate is pretty cool since you start on the top of a mountain and storm your way across a bridge. A really cool set piece all things considered. I just have to make sure Farwell doesn't die. I kinda want to be on the Count's good side. The inside of the tower is basically the same as every other tower, so it isn't long before I've collected the 7th Dragon Ball, and I tell the Count I am done babysitting, and he has one giant build coming his way. But with that, everyone is recruited for the Bruma battle, so it's time to get some armor. After trudging through numerous dungeons during this marathon of a video, Torn Achilles is a pretty quick one. That, and I have been through this place numerous times. Hack open the blades, and watch the ghosts of a different Christmas past head to the Chamber of Redemption. The only enemies in this dungeon besides the undead blades are ghosts, so I have to roast the specters alive instead of chilling them out. Once the last of the blades are expunged, I return to the central chamber to grab the plot armor of Tiber Septome and turn in all the MacGuffins to his great etc. grandson for a battle. Inside Ruma, the defenses are fortified, with soldiers all over the country rallying to defend Cyrodiil from the forces of Mariah Dagon. I let the Countess know I am ready for battle, time to call in that favor for getting the necklace, and she agrees, let there be war. I strolled through the streets to give the forces of Oblivion a thrashing of a lifetime. Once everyone showed up, Martin gave an epic, and the climax can begin. I focused on battering down every demon that came out of the gates as they spawned, and any that made it through, I let the main army clean up. I don't want to kill any bystanders, and let the battle devolve to chaos. It started out good until I ran out of magicka, then I let the rest of the army play cleanup. Also, I might have accidentally killed Bird, but let's not talk about that. Once the great gate is open, I rush my way inside. This is like the 12th gate I've been through, so I'm in speed mode. Plus, you are on a time limit before the AIWFCIY machine destroys Burma. Because it is a time limit, I rush my way through the orb. It only takes 3 minutes, but before long, the battle is won, the day is saved, and now we can begin the march to Mankar's paradise. But before confronting my destiny, I took a prolongated sleep, leveling up numerous times until I ran out of levels. Oh yeah, this will really throw the leveling out of whack. Something I love doing in my casual playthroughs before finishing a playthrough once and for all is to level up to the maximum level before Mankar in the capital. Once I was a solid 20 levels higher than I normally am for a playthrough, and most of my important stats maxed out, I talked to Sean Bean and began a Sinner's Paradise. Well sure, this place might look nice, it is everything the vile scum of evil thrives to be. Slavery, and demons ruling the people, which Santa will not allow to come to the people of Tamriel. The demons might be very high leveled, including Daedros and Spider Daedra, but they don't matter. They just go splat to Santa's blade of retribution. Santa did think about going into the cave, but these sinners must be punished. As he cuts down the forces of evil, he is reminded of everything that has happened thus far in the meaning of Christmas. Reuniting families after being separated for years. Helping the needy that otherwise cannot stand up on their own for their troubles, fighting against corruption that threatens the livelihoods of the innocent, becoming an idol for everyone to look up to, valuing the meaning of life and to enjoy living each moment, accepting all walks of life and to understand the struggles that persist, righting the wrongs of the past, and putting everything on the line to protect your friends. All these lessons learned in this long journey has helped Santa become a hero that the world needs. And now outside staring down the embodiment of evil, it is time for Santa to save Christmas. He stormed up to the Palace of Evil and began an epic duel against Mankar. Santa wastes no time in letting the heretic spat out his lies. Every slash and stab is filled with vigor, and Mankar's healing definitely proved to be a challenge for old Saint Nick. But through every trial Santa has endured, and this will be no exception. He waited patiently for Mankar to make a casual slip-up. His lust for domination causes magicka reserves to deplete. Santa was also low on magicka, but that is what stockpiling Wilkin stones are for. With one final series of slashes, Mankar falls, and Santa takes the necklace off of the false prophet, and the vestige of evil has been vanquished from the lands. Back at Cloud Ruler, Santa emerges from the pocket dimension and gives Martin a present, his birthright, and it is time to end the crisis once and for all. Together they travel to the Imperial City, and by some stroke of divinity, it happened to be close enough to December 24th. Well, not quite December since I swore Evening Star was December, not November, but close enough! Night has fallen upon the city, and Martin arrives in the palace to be coronated emperor, but the forces of Oblivion have stormed the city. All things seem hopeless, as the strongest forces of Oblivion have emerged, namely the Zivili. At the current rate, all hope seemed lost. The guards are being massacred in the streets, and desperation started to take hold. Martin comes up with one final plan, and together Santa and Martin rush to the temple. By some miracle, the two make it past Mariah Dagon, who wants her soul for Christmas. At the stroke of midnight, Martin decides to make the ultimate sacrifice, turning into a dragon, and doing battle with the devil. The titans clash at each other. Martin can fly, but is no match for Dagon's ground-to-ground superiority. Martin's wounds seem grievous, but with a lucky slash, he could open up Dagon's defenses, and with the last of his power, Martin let loose one blaze of glory, expulsing Dagon from this mortal realm at the cost of his life, and gave one last look to his friend, who he owed so much to, and turning to stone to usher in Christmas Day. And thus marks the end of this long-lost odyssey, a tale of how a simple prisoner trapped in a cell overcame all odds and became a patron saint of generosity. They say that every year, Santa uses his newfound Daedric powers to travel the world, giving gifts to the good boys and girls, all to honor his fallen friend, and the people celebrated. Meanwhile, if there is anyone on the naughty list, he would be sure to teach them a lesson. After all, his suit has to stay red. As for his faithful companion, they say the witch turned the fan into Santa's guiding light, his torch turned into a nose, and his body contorted to that of a deer. Nobody knows what happened to Santa after the battle, and when he isn't delivering presents on Christmas Eve. Some claim he is maintaining the Shivering Isles at Sheogorath, while others say Santa can cross through time and space itself, even crossing into other dimensions to teach the naughty ones a lesson. Maybe someday we could see old Saint Nick tackle the city of sin itself, but it is time to let the storyteller lie down and sleep. It is getting late, and Santa might even pay a visit tonight. Just hope you aren't on the naughty list. Thank you all for watching this very long video. Holy hell, I didn't expect this video to be this long. If you made it through this video, do let me know. I thought it'd just be an hour long, but my word, the script just kept getting deeper and deeper. So hopefully you enjoyed this movie. I sure hope I won't have to make a video this long for a long while. This last year has definitely had its ups and downs. I made some really good runs, and some of my best works, and I'm glad you are all here to help make these videos enjoyable to make. Getting a little personal, but my life has started to get very hectic lately, and while I used to be good about having a backlog of challenge runs, this run took so much of my time, given it's like 4 times the length of a normal run at least, and this is probably one of the closest I have been to a deadline in a while, but on the spur of the moment runs. I'll be taking the rest of the year off, and next year, I will wait and see how things play out, but there is a chance I might have to take a break because of my mental health. It has been on the decline lately, and I might have to take a break and take on runs at a slower pace. That, and I'm thinking about slightly changing up how I make runs, so stay tuned to that. I got nothing else to say, except I wish every one of you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and I hope to see you all in the next year, hopefully even better than this one. Also, I do wish for a sea captain hat for Christmas, and a special thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members who makes absolutely absurdly long challenge runs like this possible. Links to them along with my Discord and social medias in the description. Hopefully you liked this video. If you did, be sure to drop a like, subscribe for more masochism and any other ways to torture myself, leave them down below. This has been Orpheolus, and I'll see you all in the next one.